and thank you so much for coming back to see me over on this channel. I am going to tell you today about my postpartum experience, the little things that have helped me along the way, and just how different it has been in contrast to my last postpartum experience. So, as a new mum, we all feel, or a new parent, we all feel that huge desire to not get back to ourselves necessarily, but that sort of strange pull towards our old life and this sort of battle then with the new person that we have become as a parent. We are joined here today by a little Archer who is feeding away. So just ignore the little hands and the little grunts and little sweet noises. That is a very happy baby. But one of the big things that we forget is that not only have we grown this baby for 9 months, but we also have quite a large recovery process afterwards. So in many other cultures and countries, they honour this sort of traditional 4th trimester or the first 40 days postpartum. And that is something that I've strived really hard to do this time around, and actually something that I've become more and more passionate about, even though last time I was still working as a postpartum doula. I feel like I didn't really understand the concept of honouring it and creating the sort of time and space for rest and recovery and sort of nourishing yourself, your body, and creating that time for you to bond with your baby. So I'm going to dive straight into it with the questions that I asked myself before embarking on this new postpartum journey. And if you are embarking on that journey, let me know what you did last time. Let me know what you're doing this time that helped you embrace your postpartum. Let me know what the tips and tricks that you have, were there any particular tools that you used that helped you to have a more positive experience. Let me know down in the comment section below. Also, if you have yet to experience your postpartum, if you are still in your pregnancy and you're trying to prepare as much as you can, make sure and check out my blog post that I've done on this topic, detailing all of the different things that I'm going to talk about today. But as well as that, I have a free, yes, free downloadable template that you can use to help you create your dream postpartum experience. So when it comes to creating your dream postpartum experience, I always think that planning is key, and that where you fail to plan, you plan to fail, essentially. So let's start at the very, very beginning. And the first one is when you first go into the hospital or to begin the birthing process, if you're birthing at home or in a birthing suite in a midwife-led unit, that you have a little idea of who's going to mind your other kids, if you have other kids, or who's going to mind your pets. That's a really big question to ask yourself, because certainly for me, in order for me to be able to sort of take a deep breath and get ready and excited, I have to be aware of what the plan is. Question number 2 then, when it comes to preparing for postpartum, and they might seem like really basic questions, but there are lots of things that you can easily forget when you're sort of so involved and focused on preparing for birth. And that is, how are you going to feed your baby? So whether it is by breast or by bottle or a combination of the both, preparation and education around this topic is huge. Certainly, while breastfeeding is considered natural, it is also a learned skill both for you and for baby. So checking out a breastfeeding preparation course or having a consultation with your local lactation consultant is a really good idea. Similarly, so with bottles, making sure you know how to sort of clean and sterilize your bottles and equipment, and knowing what formula you are going to choose. My tip number 3, that involves your birth or postpartum prep team. So that might be family and friends and your partner. It might also be inquiring about a cleaner or a postpartum doula to come and help you with sort of housework and help educate you around infant care. It might be more to do with the team perspective, being regarding tools and different equipment that you might want in the home. So things that might make your life a little bit easier. I always suggest new parents, particularly breastfeeding parents, set up a little station in different rooms in the house. That might just be a little caddy with breast pads, maybe a milk collection device like the Haka, a nice big jug of water with a straw so it's really easy for you to stay well hydrated, perhaps nappies and wipes so that you're not running all over the house trying to collect all these little bits and pieces. Oh, and snacks. snacks is really important. You are going to be burning up lots of energy, and make sure that you are really fueling your body for postpartum. It's not the time to be starting a brand new diet by any means. So making sure that you've got the equipment that's going to help you, as well as the team. So that might also include just touching base with people who you may or may not require, whether that is a mental health team or professional, whether that is touching base with a lactation consultant who you know is working and doing home visits in your area, whether or not you need them. You know that you have their number on speed dial, maybe written down and stuck on the fridge, just in case you run into trouble at any point. Next thing then that I'm going to talk about is visitors, and particularly while our world is in sort of a state of chaos at the moment, things all look a little bit differently. So a global pandemic has thrown us into being a little bit more cautious about who we invite into our homes, particularly after having a new baby. I, for one, don't think it's a bad thing. So having a little think about who you're okay with visiting, when you're okay with visiting. Do you want there to be time restrictions on visits? Do you want to maybe wait until the first month is up before you invite anyone into your home, until you and your immediate family have bonded with the baby? Do you want to maybe set some ground rules that only people can come if you bring a meal, or perhaps take a load of laundry with you? There are certain things that visitors can do to make your life and your postpartum journey easier, as opposed to more difficult. So having an idea of what those boundaries are before you have your baby and making sure people are aware of that is really important. As a part of that discussion, I would also make sure that you have a chat about who is going to be implementing these sort of rules. So whether that is yourself or your partner, whether it is sending out a text to say, please, we're having a lovely time bonding with our baby at the moment, and we will send you a text to invite you when we're ready. That really sends quite a clear message about what you expect from your postpartum experience when it comes to visitors. Number 5 is self-care, and I'm actually regretting calling it that because these things are actually essential. So that is talking about your plan for sleep, your plan for elimination. Yes, going to the toilet on your own is almost unheard of postpartum, so trying to make a plan around that. And the other thing is hygiene. So that might mean a shower, a quick body wash. It might mean just washing your face and using a baby wipe for the rest of your body like you would at a festival back in the day. But making a plan around these topics and who's going to mind the baby for you during that time is really important. So when it comes to sleep, are you going to have the baby in a co-sleeper beside you? Are you going to have your baby in a little bassinet? Who's going to get up out of bed to get the baby for you if you are the one feeding them? Who is going to do middle of the night nappy changes around those feeding and sleeping times? Is your partner maybe going to go into the spare bedroom until such time as sleep settles out a little bit? Sometimes that can be something that makes things a little bit easier if you know that at least one of you has got a full night's sleep the following day, so you can rely on them for other tasks. Maybe it's minding other children, maybe it's minding pets, maybe it's minding the house and making all of the meals. Knowing that you have got a nice juggling act going on and lots of teamwork, and having the conversation about that before your baby arrives, as opposed to 3 o'clock in the morning when neither of you are going to be at your best, in your best selves for that discussion, is a really good idea. When it comes to elimination, I'm going to talk about this a little bit later on in another section, but one of the big things is making sure that you are going to the toilet every day and going regularly enough. So you want to make sure that you are creating space for that natural urge for you to have a poo. So we have a natural urge every day about a half an hour after our first meal. So if you can sort of plan around that while you have your partner perhaps at home with you to support you, whether you have them at home for parental leave or not, whether it's before they leave in the morning, making sure that you have time to do that first is really important. Making sure that you are having plenty of fluids. Perhaps you're going to take a glass of prune juice. I always say half prune juice, half warm water is a great way to get things moving. Can be a gentler way rather than taking medications, although a stool softener isn't something that I would be against in those early days. The first poo can be a little bit scary. So making sure you're getting plenty of fibre and plenty of water is fantastic. Also, I say you want to wait for that natural urge as opposed to placing any extra pressure on your pelvic floor. So making sure that you have that sort of waiting for the natural urge, so whether that is the first half an hour after having your first meal, or whether that is just waiting till later on in the day, make sure you are adopting the ideal position. So that is in that nice squat position, a position that can be really effective, but also a position that can be particularly comfortable. So the best way to do this is to get yourself a little squatty potty. I should have brought mine in with me, but it's a little stool that you place just where your feet are going to go, underneath the toilet seat or underneath the toilet where you're going to be sitting. And what it does is it creates that natural position where that lovely U bend is for your body to just be able to go nice and easily. You might also find it a little bit more comfortable, particularly if you've had stitches down below, to do a little bit of counter pressure with maybe a little bit of tissue or a pad on the perineum where you might have torn. Number 6 then is meal prep and household cleaning. So for me, there are certain things I simply could not do one-handed, and regardless, in that postpartum period, I was not going to be doing them anyway. So having a chat about what sort of household chores are necessary for on a daily basis in your home, whether that is emptying the compost, or if you're potty training another kid, emptying out a potty, whether that is taking the dog out for a walk, whether that is making sure that the dishes are done. What are those things that have to be done every day that cannot be missed? Making sure that the bins are emptied, making sure that the meals are prepped in plenty of time for dinner and for meal times is really important, and having a chat about that before your baby arrives can be really, really key. The last thing that you want to be doing, particularly if you have been taking on sort of a majority of that load, is to be trying to sort of educate your partner when you can't physically get up to show them. So having a chat about that first, perhaps even going as far as to make a little list. I know that's what I did, because for me that's what worked best. So it was a physical check off the things as we got them done, or as my partner got them done. So for Pete, he was not going to think to empty the upstairs bathroom bin of, nappies and pads as I was going through them. So I had to make a little list that said, empty the compost, empty the bins, make sure that I have got some one-handed snacks, so whether that's a sandwich and a smoothie for the following day when he was gone back to work. Things like that can be really, really helpful. I always think about this as your non-negotiables. So make a little list of your non-negotiables, particularly when your partner goes back to work. So whether that is, when they come in the door, they check in. Have you gone to the toilet today? Have you had a little wash? Have you had something to eat? They're the things that are absolutely vital. So making sure that you have a discussion about that and the teamwork around that before your baby arrives can make it a lot easier. So kind of following on from that, we're going to talk a little bit about nutrition for postpartum. So while we might mind ourselves really well during pregnancy, because we're so aware that we're sharing those nutrients with our baby and, laying down all of that foundation for them, we aren't always so aware of it postpartum, when in fact we've got a lot of healing to do. So particularly that site, whether it was a vaginal birth or a cesarean birth, about where your placenta has come away from uterine lining, that's about a dinner plate size wound that needs to heal. Whether it is stitches that are requiring healing around the perineal area, whether it is a cesarean birth you're recovering from. All of this recovery takes time, and it takes a lot of nourishment and rest. So making sure that you are doing things with your diet that are going to support that. So you're thinking about nourishing, warming meals like stews, soups, maybe it's a dal or a curry recipe that you love, things that are going to be really warming but also full of nourishing ingredients. Lots of fibre, so things are going to move through that digestive system nice and easily, but equally lots of protein. Protein, and particularly the amino acids that build up the protein, are those things that help with wound healing. So making sure that you've got plenty of that in your everyday diet is going to be really, really important. Following on from the ingredients and the sort of properties and nourishing parts of the food that you're looking at, we want to figure out how we're going to get them to us. So whether you are a really fantastic cook yourself and you've stocked your freezer with enough meals for you to last the first few weeks, or perhaps your friends are kind enough to have started a meal train service for you, I'll link the website for starting one of those down below. Make sure that you treat your friends when they are postpartum as you would like to be treated yourself, so that they know what way to follow suit. You might also consider this time to be asking, instead of gifts for the baby, to be asking for meal delivery kits. So whether that in Ireland is Kayla's Kitchen or tooo or Deliveroo, depending on where you are in the world, this can be a really nice way to make sure that you are nourishing yourself, and then if you're breastfeeding or if you're formula feeding, making sure that you are a better parent for your new baby. Another little point that's worth mentioning when we talk about our postpartum recovery and our nutrition is to continue taking your prenatal supplement. So while many of us just go, okay, we're not pregnant anymore, and just stop taking them altogether, making sure that you are taking that can make sure that there's little gaps where perhaps your meals aren't reaching that full complement of nutrition that's required for you. It's also a really nice way to get a little bit of iron in, because whether you've had minimal blood loss, so in and around 300 mils or quite a bit more, we've got to build those iron stores back up to make sure that we ourselves are feeling good and energetic and capable of minding our little babies. So the last little thing that I recommend you guys consider before your baby arrives is movement. And the reason for that is that oftentimes it's the last thing we think about once we've just had a baby. But I recommend actually beginning your pelvic floor exercises not long after your baby has arrived. So for me, that was the following morning, and I don't recommend doing that for the purpose of strengthening them back up, but just touching base with your pelvic floor also sends a huge rush of lovely, fresh, nutrient-rich, oxygenated blood to that area, which can also help with healing, but also to reduce any swelling that has happened down below. The other movement that I recommend starting early on is that diaphragmatic breath, to just really sort of reconnect with your core. And what you're doing there is helping to sort of repair the diastasis recti, or that separation of your ab muscles that happens naturally with the majority of pregnancies. If you're curious about what sort of movement you would like to be doing postpartum, I have a 10-minute movement series that I started doing at about 2 weeks postpartum with Archer, and I'll make sure I link that video down below here. The other thing that I recommend doing is just, if you were lying in the bed, if you are in the hospital post-cesarean section, one of the big risks of laying down in bed so much is having a DVT or a clot. So in order to reduce that, the simple things that you can do are ankle circles, so just simply circling your ankles, or foot pumps where you are pumping that blood through your calf. So doing those while you are lying and resting in the bed can be a nice way to avoid that really scary complication. The other thing that's nice to do is just some gentle stretches of your neck, so some neck rolls, some shoulder rolls, particularly if you are breastfeeding. And the tendency that we have is to look down at our sweet babies all the time. We can end up with all that horrible neck tension. Make sure and check out my highlight section on my Instagram as well for some positions that you can adopt for breastfeeding that might be a little bit kinder to our neck and shoulders. So well done for sticking around until now. So now we're into my bonus tips. So as I am quite literally 3 days out of my own first 40 days postpartum, the difference between this time with Archer versus last time with Atticus is huge. And some of the things that I did quite differently are really quite simple. The first one being ask for and accept help. And honestly, this is the hardest thing to do, but the first time you do it is going to be the hardest time. The thing that really got me over sort of the fear of asking for help and the fear of being seen as not being good enough or not capable was just how good I feel when I help someone else, and thinking of it as sort of a gift that I'm giving to my friends and family by allowing them to help me. The next thing that I really did was set the scene postpartum. So I made myself a little nook. I created this sort of tranquil space. For me, it was in the bedroom with beautiful new sheets. I got myself some nice pajamas. I made sure that I set the scene by continuing to light the candles that I had in my birth space. I also continued to play my birth playlist so that anyone who came into that space could see quite quickly that this was the sort of energy that I was going for, that I was trying to continue that sort of peaceful tranquility throughout my postpartum experience, since there are already so many big energy shifts and big changes happening postpartum that I wanted to make sure that above all I was able to just come back to my body and be calm and relaxed and be able to just focus on this time with my sweet new baby. And the last of my little bonus tips is, if you are doing all of these things, if you are minding yourself, if you are asking for and accepting help, if you have figured out what your non-negotiables on a daily basis are, be prepared to fight that itch to get up and go, that itch to get up and be wandering around back to normality. Because if you're reminding yourself in the way that you should be, you will feel that little boost of energy and you will be feeling good. And take that as a sign that you're doing things well and to continue in that, not a sign to get up and go and have coffee with your pals. If you found this video helpful, do let me know, and let me know what your tips and tricks for having a positive postpartum experience have been down in that comment section down below. And make sure and check out the little links to any of the products that I found helpful postpartum and any of the blog posts that I've discussed or videos that you might find helpful down in the comment section down below or the description box down below. And after that, I will see you in my next video.